about this.
Yeah,
I saw that on your website. What is a bar camp?
So in August of 2003, Tim O'Reilly, who is a big publishing mogul, he publishes books like O'Reilly's Guide to JavaScript and Pearl in a Nutshell. And you've probably seen these books. They have little animals on the cover.
All about programming.
All about technology. All different kinds of technology books. So if you're a geek, you've seen these books. They have little animals on all the covers. And he had this event out at his summer home that he called Foo Camp. Friends of O'Reilly Camp, FOO Camp.
Foo Camp, I like that.
Yeah, it was really, really clever. And the way that it worked is he said, come on out to my summer home and I'm going to provide you with free Wi-Fi and bring your tents and your sleeping bags and your laptops and I'll give you free Wi-Fi and I'll give you projectors and whiteboards and food and we're just going to collaborate. I'm going to give you this blank programming grid and on the programming grid will be time slots and rooms and you can write in what you want to talk about and we're going to roll our own conference. And they did. And the people that got invited to that were really, you had to be someone important on O'Reilly's radar. So people like Larry and Sergey, who founded Google, and Richard Yu locally was invited. I don't know if you know Richard, but he was one of the original founders of Rackspace Managed Hosting. And people like that get invited out there. And they met each other and they gave presentations ad hoc, just spontaneously, about different things they were interested and passionate about. And they ended up forming these bonds. In 2004, he was going to do it again. And this guy that worked at Technorati named Tontik Shelik, he's also the guy responsible for the IE 5.1 browser on the Mac. He wanted to go to Foo Camp because it was a really great honor.
Yeah.
And so he wrote away to the people at the Foo Camp and they said, oh, don't worry, we were going to invite you anyway. Come on out to Foo Camp. So he goes off to Foo Camp in 2004, has an amazing experience, meets great people. They collaborate on all these great projects. Then 2005 comes along and it's August and people are starting to get their invitations to Foo Camp and Tontik doesn't get one.
Oops.
So he gets a little angry. He gets a little upset. He feels like he's kind of been left behind. And
kind of been snubbed.
Yeah, been snubbed. Like he's not good enough to be invited back. And he calls up some of his friends after being angry and says, I'm not going to be angry anymore. We can do this ourselves. And he calls up Matt Mullenweg, who founded WordPress. He's actually a local Houston guy. Founded what? He founded WordPress. It's one of the number one blogging systems. So he called up Matt Mullenweg, Eris Stassi, Ryan King, Andy Smith, and I'm missing someone, I'm sure. Chris Messina from Flock. And they all got together at Ritual Roasters Coffee House in Palo Alto, and he said, you know, there's this thing I went to called Foo Camp. This is how it works. We can do our own, and we should call it Bar Camp. But we shouldn't be elitist. We should, you know, invite everyone. They were going to call it Bar Camp. Because in programming, there's a term called FooBar. You've probably heard it in the military. FooBar,
yes, yes.
And so that's where the bar comes from. Has nothing to do with drinking. Although there is often beer at bar camp.
Yeah.
And so they said, yeah, that's a great idea, Tontik, but we're really busy. Matt had just started a job at CNET. Chris was working at Flock. They were all really, really busy, had too much on their plate. 2 weeks go by. It's now 6 days until Foo Camp. And, of course, the very next day after that meeting, Tontik got an invitation to Foo Camp, so now he doesn't care about bar camp anymore. But now it's 6 days away, and he starts getting phone calls from Matt and Chris, and they're saying, oh, my goodness, remember that idea you had for Bar Camp? We want to do it. And he's like, no, 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 no. The idea was if we were going to do it, we're going to do it at the exact same time as Foo Camp, but we're going to drown out all the noise and buzz on the internet and make Bar Camp better than Foo Camp. We have 6 days.
Big thing.
Yeah, we have 6 days. There's no way we can do it. But in 6 days, using just a wiki, which is like a website anybody can edit, they found a venue, sponsors, and 330 geeks showed up in Palo Alto for the first ever Bar Camp. And they said, this is so much fun, we should do it again next year. But that's not what happened. From that point in time till I co-hosted Bar Camp Texas in 2006, the summer of 2006, which was like my 5th bar camp, there had been over 84 bar camps around the world. Bar Camp Paris, Bar Camp Bangalore. The idea spread because people were craving this knowledge, this ability to share.
And all these tech experts could share with people who were hungry for the information.
And so it started as technology, but then it evolved, and there was wine camp and photo camp, and I've done social media camps, and I've done, you name a camp. We recently at Houston Technology Center, they did Green Camp. So it's all about green anything.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of things that are happening in the world. People are deciding to forego expensive conferences in favor of something like Bar Camp. At a traditional conference, the best connections happen in the hallways and corridors.
Yes.
Bar Camp's all corridor.
Yeah, because you write your own topic up on the whiteboard instead of someone else who creates functions deciding for you what the topics are.
Exactly.
Great idea. So instead of the American Marketing Association doing these gigantic things, the technology associations doing them, the attendees and the presenters just create these from nothing.
Absolutely. and the trend is toward, and bar camps have gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, I've hosted some that have had 1,000+ people. That's way too many people. And I have friends that have said that the trend last year was in big conferences and over-the-top productions. But the trend for 2009 will be small conferences. And I have a friend that's working on a conference called Small Talks. And the way that it works is every person is very small. They're doing it in 11 cities, including London and Paris. And the way that it's going to work is our people are invited, and it's limited to the number of participants, and everybody gets their own personal private little whiteboard, and they have a T-shirt and a pen, and on their T-shirt it has their name and topics they'd like to talk about. And they can just walk around and make conversations and write out things and share information.
They're their own whiteboard.
Exactly.
Question to you. Why aren't these being done online?
Well, there's portions of it that's done online, and there are certain, there was a bar camp in Second Life, in fact, that was hosted. The first one was hosted by Eric Rice, who's a pretty predominant podcaster, and he hosted the first bar camp Second Life. And so it is reaching out to that demographic as well.
But there's still synergy that happens when there are people facing people.
I really believe in taking all my online relationships offline. And when I said that I wasn't making a lot of money, but I was traveling around, part of that was that I was traveling around meeting people I knew online to solidify our bond of friendship. And I did that so well that I now have communities that I'm welcomed into in LA, in New York, in San Francisco,
and you
Boulder.
were invited.
And I'm not just invited, but I have places to stay and 100 people to have dinner with.
And you were invited to all these technology camps.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of the connections you made.
Absolutely. And I hosted camps in other cities. I hosted Bar Camp Buffalo. I'm sorry, Bar Camp, not Buffalo, the other one. Next city over, Rochester. The first ever Bar Camp Rochester. I hosted it, and I live in Houston. Yeah. So how did that happen? I was on a way to my family reunion, and it was 2 weeks away, and I said, well, there's got to be geeks in Rochester. So I Googled geeks in Rochester, and I found some people.
So you had a tax-deductible reason to go to your family reunion.
So
we're gonna take a break right here. We'll be right back.